Why not just have an open border? Yeah, like, tear down the wall.
Jason Beck, Associate Director, Total Force Requirements and Sourcing Policy, says the country needs open borders.
You know, just lots of that talk about, like, border security.
Yeah, border security, what does that even mean?
It doesn't mean anything. It's just, like, throwing money and people at a problem that doesn't really exist. When has a terrorist ever come in?
I would like to do some work on the state's monopoly on violence.
State's monopoly, what is that?
It's the idea that the state, meaning the country, is the only sort of legitimate purveyor of violence and force of force. We're the only ones with guns, right?
Jason Beck, Associate Director, Total Force Requirements and Sourcing Policy from the Office of the Secretary of Defense, describes it as, quote, "We, the government, are the only ones with guns."
I think we should repeal it. And take them all away. Whatever, just take them all.
So what would be like a federal solution?
But I wonder if you would see a similar solution to like school integration.
Yeah.
You know, where they did have to mobilize the National Guard. How many people in the National Guard, maybe were personally opposed to integration, but still followed orders and made it happen?
Hopefully they would have to follow the orders.
Right.
I don't know how that's going to happen.
We need to pack the court.
Jason Beck says you have to pack the Supreme Court.
You have all the power to solve the world issues.
Court reform, you need to get a majority on the court so that they can stop the legislation.
He told us he writes the answers for high-level officials at congressional posture hearings.
Oh, you actually write the answers for the congressional questions and stuff?
Yeah. When we're talking about posture hearings, it's usually very high level. Universal health care, we could start there. Abolishing the Senate. Gosh, there's so many things that you could do. I do have the classified stuff, but that I can't talk about.
Oh, you're turning me on already. I can neither confirm nor deny.
Made you dinner, some rose petals here. I'm a little bit of a romantic, so would you mind untying it for me? Cheers. See you again. So, you've heard of this guy, what's his name? James O'Keefe? Or James O'Keefe?
Yeah, I think so.
You've heard of him?
He was the one who, he would, go undercover and, try to trick Democrats into saying stuff. He's a terrible person.
He's a terrible person.
Jason Beck, Associate Director, Total Force Requirements and Sourcing Policy, Office of the Secretary of Defense in the Pentagon, articulates his extreme policy views, including confiscating all guns, abolishing the Senate, tearing down the border wall, opening the border, removing the Electoral College, and establishing a state monopoly on violence.
Universal health care, we could start there. Repealing the Second Amendment for sure. Abolishing the Senate. Gosh, there's so many things that you could do.
He also talks about Eric Prince. Eric Prince, former Navy SEAL, founded a company called Blackwater, known as a PMC, a private military contractor. In our few meetings with Jason Beck, who uses a fake name, Aiden Grey, he speaks about private contracts from the Pentagon, and Jason talks about his role in establishing the scope of those contracts.
Eric Prince, he was the leader of Blackwater. They rebranded after the scandal. He's actually Betsy DeVos's brother.
Wow.
He's terrible, and he's worse. He's one of my least favorite people in the world.
Who?
This guy, the Eric Prince.
He's your least favorite person. Wow.
One of them. He really grinds my gears. Because it's such an immoral thing to do. And he's just out there doing it and making so much money, and there's no accountability for any of the bad things that they've done. Because he runs companies of mercenaries, and they go out and they do bad things,
Wow.
and he's very pro mercenary, right? 'Cause why wouldn't he be? That's what he does.
So what are you doing to prevent this from happening again?
trying to get policies in place that make it more difficult to use them and that establish standards in compliance with international standards about like the type of companies that can do this and like the certifications that they have to have in order to be considered, you know, like on the up and up, that sort of thing.
We've reached out to Eric Prince for comment. I'll be sitting down with him to discuss all of this soon. But speaking of Eric Prince, let me tell you something about Eric Prince. He knows a lot about cybersecurity surveillance, and he's developed a new smartphone called Unplugged. Because we're doing investigations into the White House, the IRS, and now the Secretary of Defense, Pentagon personnel, I'm personally very concerned about how every move and communication of my journalism team is being tracked by our phones. The people who support us, millions of you, are rightfully concerned and worried about being tracked and having your private information compromised. One of the things I know for sure is that with the smartphone you are likely using, you are being listened to and tracked 24/7. They can see our texts, they can see our emails, they know where we go, who we call, which apps we use, and what we buy and what we browse. And by having an ad ID running on your phone, the apps you're using are constantly gathering and storing your personal information and using it to monitor you and to monetize our data. We thought our phone is the product, but the reality is the product is us, and our personal information is the product. And by the way, even when we think our phone is off, it's still listening. I'm excited to announce that the days of our phones harvesting our personal private information for the benefit of big tech and big government ends right now. Because of a new smartphone developed by Eric Prince, the phone is called Unplugged. Unplugged is built with a totally independent operating system that is absolutely secure. No tracking us in apps. Every call and text is end-to-end encrypted. They can't listen in or follow our online activity, and if we were ever under threat, we can send a code and our data is totally wiped. And I love that it has the camera, speed, storage, and chipset that rival the iPhone and Android. If you're like me, I've had it as a journalist or any citizen that wants to protect their privacy. I've had it with all of my personal and private information being exposed and exploited by big tech and big government. So I'm joining Eric Prince, Mr. Pentagon Guy, and I'm switching to my new Unplugged phone. And I'm also going to tell you how you can also. So grab a pen, write this down. To protect your privacy and get your very own Unplugged phone, that's unplugged.com/OMG. That's unplugged.com/OMG. Take your privacy back. Unplugged.com/OMG. And now here's the rest of Inside the Pentagon.
I'm an assistant director.
Assistant director? Mm-hmm. What part of it?
I work for the Undersecretary of Defense for Personnel and Readiness.
So you're Aiden.
Yeah.
And your last name?
Gray.
So Aiden Grey.
Yes.
Meet Jason Beck, Associate Director, Total Force Requirements and Sourcing Policy, Office of the Secretary of Defense. Even though his real name is Jason Beck, his LinkedIn says Jason Beck, and phone records from his cell phone indicate that Jason Beck is who he is, he introduced himself to me as Aiden Grey.
Is it Aiden your real name?
What do you mean by real name?
Oh, is it your middle name? Is it your...
It's my first name.
It's your first name.
Okay.
Jason Beck is not a low-level official. He told us he writes the answers for high-level officials at congressional posture hearings.
It's posture hearing season.
It's what season?
Posture hearing.
Posture hearing.
Yeah, so every year around this time, the department's senior leadership basically they go over to the Hill for hearings on the department's posture.
Oh, posture.
Yeah.
I see.
So it's
Like posture.
So it's a whole lot of, it's testimony,
Oh, okay.
it's questions, from...
Do you have to go?
No, but I help
Prepare.
write the answers, that sort of thing. So
Oh, you actually write the answers for the congressional questions and stuff.
yeah.
Do you get to write them for like all the people at the top?
When we're talking about posture hearings, it's usually very high level. So, like Secretary of Defense or Undersecretary of Defense, and it'll be on a wide range of topics.
Jason Beck tells us the division he works inside the Department of Defense, Personnel and Readiness, handles diversity, equity, and inclusion matters.
Since we're personnel and readiness, they've been taking aim at us a lot lately. They don't like diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, the DEI stuff that we're doing.
Jason Beck says the health situation with his boss, the Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, was strange and concerning. Lloyd Austin was reported to be hospitalized for weeks following his cancer treatment.
My boss was saying something about like, oh, Austin's really sick and he's there lying about his health. I don't know if there's any truth to that.
I mean, the way they handled it was really strange.
Yeah.
Nobody knew he was in the hospital, like, for a while.
I know.
Yeah, which was like great. I mean, when I heard about that on the news, I was like, what? It was very strange.
Jason Beck, Associate Director of Total Force Requirements and Sourcing Policy from the Office of the Secretary of Defense, says he would like to work on a monopoly on violence, which, according to Britannica, is a concept that the state alone has the right to use or authorize the use of physical force. Beck describes it as, quote, "We, the government, are the only ones with guns."
I would like to do some work on the state's monopoly on violence.
On the what?
The state's monopoly on violence.
States monopoly. What is that?
It's the idea that the state, meaning the country, is the only sort of legitimate purveyor of violence and coercive force. We're the only ones with guns, right?
Going back to your topic, it's like the state should be the only one that has access to these sorts of firearms, essentially.
Yeah.
Jason Beck, Associate Director, Total Force Requirements and Sourcing Policy from the Office of the Secretary of Defense, says that, quote, "We, the government, should repeal the Second Amendment and take all the guns away," unquote.
Man, they always shout Second Amendment, Second Amendment.
I think we should repeal it and take them all away. Whatever, just take them all. Gosh, there's so many things that you could do.
On guns, particularly, would just be repeal it.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think we have a need for it.
Jason Beck says you just have to take the guns, up to and including mobilization of the National Guard.
How do we deal with these crazy people, though? Like, they don't want to give them up.
You have to take them.
So what would be like a federal solution?
But I wonder if you would see a similar solution to like school integration.
Yeah.
Where they did have to mobilize the National Guard. How many people in the National Guard, maybe were personally opposed to integration, but still followed orders and made it happen?
Hopefully they would have to follow the orders.
Right.
Because that's what they'd have to do.
Right. Yeah, if it's a lawfully given order.
Correct. First step, though, we got to somehow get people on that court. I don't know how that's going to happen.
We need to pack the court.
Jason Beck from the Office of the Secretary of Defense says you have to pack the Supreme Court.
You have all the power to solve the world issues.
Court reform.
Court reform.
Yeah. So, we're going to pack the court first.
We're going to pack the court.
Yep. You need to get a majority on the court so that they can stop the legislation.
We need to pack the court.
Yeah.
The Democrats don't want to do that.
Why not?
Because they're beholden to corporate interests.
Jason Beck, Associate Director, Total Force Requirements and Sourcing Policy, says the country needs open borders.
I mean, the recent immigration bill fiasco was almost unbelievable. Yeah, it's bad.
Yeah.
It's really racist. You know, just lots of that talk about like border security, that kind of nonsense. You know,
Yeah, border security. What does that even mean?
it doesn't mean anything. It's just like throwing money in people at a problem that doesn't really exist. The only crisis is one that we've created. It's a humanitarian crisis, but it's not a security crisis.
And if anybody wants to come in, they can come in.
I don't see why not, frankly.
Yeah.
Like, why do we need quotas?
Yeah.
Why not just have an open border? There's no Taliban coming in through Mexico. Like, they just make that stuff out of whole cloth, you know?
Yeah.
Like, when has a terrorist ever come in?
If you are smart enough, you will know who I am. But you are really not smart enough to know who I am. But soon you're gonna know who I am.
Jason Beck does not believe terrorists come across the border. OMG is doing ongoing reporting on the border and finding piles of identification cards from people from China, Mexico, Turkey, and Afghanistan. More on that soon.
Yeah, like, tear down the wall.
Yeah.
Why do we need a wall? I mean, it's stupid and it doesn't work anyway.
Yeah.
And it's disruptive environmentally.
Yeah.
And it just makes it harder for people, you know, like people die in the desert.
Yeah.
And it's like, why are we letting that happen? That doesn't
Yeah.
have to happen. Stop border construction, stop wall construction. Tear it down, I think. Reverse the wall. Stop deploying troops. It's unnecessary. You have to get rid of Title 42, which is the like immigration statutory stuff that Trump did. That all needs to go.
The associate director inside the Office of the Secretary of Defense gives his thoughts on Biden. When I asked his thoughts, it appears he wasn't sure if Biden was going to live through the next election cycle.
Do you think Biden's going to make it?
Is he going to live?
The associate director in the Office of the Secretary of Defense gives his thoughts on a war with China.
Do you think that, like, if we go to war with China, that would America be prepared to fight that, or would China, like, defeat us because they're just superior?
I think it depends on what you mean by defeat and what kind of war. Like, are we talking about China's invading Taiwan and we're coming to Taiwan's defense? I mean, that is the likeliest scenario, but
What do you think if that happens?
I don't know that. Like, we are each other's biggest trading partners, and I don't know that anyone really knows what will happen economically. You know, like, that'll be a big shock to the system. So I think that'll be a huge unknown in terms of, like, stuff on the ground. Also classified, so
Yes.
I can't talk about that stuff.
Jason Beck, who works for the Secretary of Defense, goes on to tell us he is unable to tell me certain things due to their classified nature.
I do have the classified stuff, but that I can't talk about.
Oh, you're turning me on already. I can neither confirm nor deny.
But what was not made classified is Jason Beck's bottom surgery. Beck goes on to give us detailed information about how his plumbing is different.
So I had bottom surgery.
Bottom surgery?
Yeah.
What happened?
What do you mean?
The bottom surgery.
Yeah.
Oh. Yes. Yes. Understood.
It's not like a huge deal. It just, it's just painful.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is it something that you wanted to do for a long time?
Yeah. For a while.
Yeah. I can't say that I've had that done, but
I didn't do any bottom surgery or anything like that. How does that work? Like if we were to be physical, intimate. I've never been with someone who has had the procedure.
The plumbing's different.
Stay tuned for the next episode of On the Inside for more. And if you're on the inside, send us an encrypted message on Signal. Message us at tips.o'keefe OKeefMediaGroup.com or DM us on Instagram or X, and we will get in touch with you. If you are aware of corruption, fraud, abuse, or scandal in the government or corporations or anywhere, or if you want to sign up to become an American swiper, go to OKeefMediaGroup.com/swiper. It takes a lot of money to do this kind of work, and I wanted to thank the Wellness Company for being a great OMG supporter and for offering us a 15% discount on their medical emergency kit. Who knows what the crazies at the CDC are going to pull next? Be sure and get your medical emergency kit and 15% discount by going to twc.health/OMG. That's twc.health/OMG. And huge thanks again to our friends at the Wellness Company for supporting our work here at OMG.